The afternoon the incident happened. The sun was setting, and the sky looked strange, making everything feel odd and tense. Elon sat in his private jet that afternoon, watching the world outside blur with thick clouds. The engines made a steady, deep sound, vibrating through the relaxed seats. The air smelled of wood and a little bit of jet fuel, a smell that felt familiar to him. But today, as the plane started to land, something felt different. A cold, heavy feeling dropped into his stomach, like a stone falling into water. This wasn't the usual excitement of landing from a long trip. No, this felt wrong. His skin tingled, and a quiet unease crept up his back, sharp like winter cold. Before the plane even touched the ground, his phone buzzed beside him. Each buzz made his nerves jump. He picked it up, his hands shaking a little, and saw dozens of messages on the screen. His eyes rushed over the words until one hit him hard in the chest. Your house is on fire. Everyone is now in the hospital. The message was short, harsh, like a slap to his face. His breath got stuck, caught between his chest and throat. He stared at the words, hoping they would change, but they stayed the same: fire. Hospital. Siren. Jericho. His family. He couldn't understand the words clearly. Then the plane jolted to a stop, and the engine slowed with a tired sound. Elon pressed his forehead against the cool window. Outside, past the runway, a dark cloud of smoke rose into the sky. It was thick and black, twisting like a snake. His heart pounded hard, twice. The smoke was coming from his home. It wasn't just a small spot on the horizon, it was a warning, something was terribly wrong. He stumbled off the plane, his steps unsteady, the hot air rushing at him. A black car waited nearby, the engine purring softly. He climbed in, slamming the door shut. Go, he said, his voice tight, and the car sped away. The city rushed past, lights flashing, horns honking, people talking, but it all felt distant. The message kept playing in his mind: fire. Hospital. He tried to think of Siren and Jericho safe, but his mind betrayed him. Flames filled his thoughts, red, hungry, burning down the house, choking the halls with smoke. He saw Siren reaching for Jericho, her voice drowned out by the fire, and he hadn't been there. The guilt weighed on him, heavy and crushing. The air thickened as they got closer. A sharp, burnt smell filled the car: wood, plastic, something metal. It burned his throat and made his eyes sting. He leaned forward, looking out the window, seeing the smoke grow bigger and darker. The car screeched to a stop, and Elon rushed out, the heat hitting him hard. The air was thick with the smell of his home burning. He squinted through the smoke, seeing his broken mansion. The white columns were crooked and dark with soot. The roof had collapsed, broken beams sticking out like sharp bones. The shattered glass sparkled in the wreckage. The smoke spun in lazy turns, while ash drifted down like dirty snow. Firefighters moved through the mess, their yellow suits covered in dirt, shouting over the crackling fire. Hoses sprayed water, hissing against the heat. Elon walked forward, his shoes crunching on glass and wood. The ground felt warm under his feet. He searched the chaos for Siren's bright hair or Jericho's small body. But there was nothing. Just strangers working hard, their faces tired from what they had seen. Then a hand brushed his arm. He turned quickly, his heart racing. A young officer stood there, his face pale with dark eyes. They are at the hospital, the officer said. Your wife and son are alive, but, he stopped, his lips tight. But what? Elon asked, stepping closer, his voice breaking. Which hospital? The officer quickly told him, Mercy General, and pointed down the road. Elon nodded, already moving back to the car. He slammed the door. Mercy General. Now. The car sped off, the wreckage fading in the mirror. But stayed with him, heavy in his mind. The ride to the hospital felt long and tense. The city blurred outside. Elon sat forward, his hands tight in his lap, his nails digging into his skin. He felt like a spring ready to snap. The city's noise faded, but in his mind, it was just fire. Hospital. His breaths came quick and shallow, his chest tight with worry. He saw Siren trapped in the fire, her cries swallowed by the smoke, Jericho reaching out for her. He had been on that plane, drinking coffee, while they fought to stay alive. The thought cut through him, cold and sharp. The car pulled up to Mercy General, tires screeching. Elon rushed out, his legs shaky, and burst through the hospital doors. The hospital air hit him with coldness and the sharp smell of cleaning. Nurses hurried past, their shoes clicking on the floor, voices low under the sound of machines. He went to the desk, his suit dirty and covered in ash. "Siren and Jericho," he said, his voice rough. "Where are they?" A nurse pointed to the ICU and he ran down the hall, his heart pounding. The hall seemed endless, each step echoing in his ears. He turned a corner and stopped. There they were. Siren lay still, her face pale, tubes connected to machines. Jericho was next to her, small and wrapped in bandages, his chest rising slowly. Elon's knees gave out, but he caught himself and moved closer. He took Siren's hand, feeling it cold and lifeless, and whispered her name. Her eyes blinked open, weak but alive. "Jericho," she whispered, looking at their son. Elon followed her gaze. Jericho looked small and bruised, his face pale. The fire hadn't just destroyed their home, it had torn them apart. Doctors stood close, speaking quietly but seriously. Siren's condition was very bad. Jericho had a tough road ahead. Elon was there, looking strong, but inside he felt weak, filled with fear and guilt. That night, he stayed by them, holding Siren's hand and watching Jericho's slow breaths. The machines kept beeping, keeping them alive. Morning came slowly, dark and heavy. When Elon returned from the restaurant, that morning, walking into his wife and son's hospital room. The machine kept beeping but Siren wasn't moving her body anymore. Elon called the nurse's attention. A nurse entered, her face tired, eyes full of sadness. She didn't speak, just looked at him, and he understood. Siren had passed away. He held her hand tighter, feeling her warmth fade away, slipping through his fingers like sand. Everything felt wrong, and he wanted to scream or break something, but all he could do was cry. She was gone, his love, Jericho's mom, taken by smoke and fire. He asked about the nurse who had stayed with them overnight, the one who tried to save Siren. They told him she had been fired for the loss. Elon barely listened. He just wanted Siren back, but that was impossible now. He buried her alone, the sky cloudy. Jericho sat in a wheelchair, staring at the ground, his spirit broken. Weeks passed in a blur, hospital visits, therapy, then back home to a quieter house. The air felt cold with sadness. Elon tried to help Jericho, sitting with him, and talking to him, but work took him away. Each time he returned, Jericho seemed more lost, his son who couldn't hear or speak, now unable to walk, fading into silence. Elon hired many people, therapists, teachers, and nannies with perfect resumes. They came, tried, and left. Jericho stared at them, unresponsive, his eyes dull. They all gave up, saying he was beyond help. One rainy Tuesday, Elon sat at the kitchen table, tired and drained, holding a cold cup of coffee. The door creaked open. A woman walked in, wearing a simple blue dress, faded but clean, with a worn-out bag over her shoulder. Her hair was tied back, and she glanced around the house, calm and steady. "Laura Crowns?" Elon asked, his voice tired. "Yes, sir," she said with a warm, calm voice. "I am here for the nanny job." Elon almost turned her away. She wasn't like the others, no fancy clothes or perfect job experience. Just a simple dress, calm eyes, and a quiet presence that didn't fit in his cold house. But something stopped him, maybe the way she stood, calm and strong. They sat in his study room, rain tapping on the glass windows. "Mr. Elon," she said, looking at him, "your son needs more than rules. He needs someone who believes in him when he can't believe in himself. That's me. Her voice was soft but strong, like a warm fire on a cold night. Elon was too tired to argue. Start tomorrow, he said. But she began right away. She knelt by Jericho's wheelchair, her hands gentle as she signed. Hi, sweetheart. I am Laura. I am here for you. She spoke too, saying it for Elon. Jericho just stared, saying nothing. Laura stayed calm and patient. Days passed, and she stayed calm. She didn't push him. She brought small things, and soft toys and sat with him, offering without expecting anything back. If he ignored her, she smiled and tried again. She put bright notes on his wall. You are brave, you are loved, you are stronger than the fire, Jericho. Simple words in bright colors, saying what he couldn't hear. Nights when sleep dodged him, she danced. In the soft glow of his room, her arms swayed, her feet gliding across the floor, moving to a silent melody. Jericho watched, his eyes steady at first, then softening into a smile. One evening, Elon peeked in, leaning against the doorframe. Jericho's lips curved with a smile, small but bright. Jericho smiled, a real smile for the first time in a long while. Elon felt a spark of hope, something he hadn't felt in a long time. The house changed. Jericho's spirit started to wake up. Elon began coming home earlier. One night, he found Laura in the kitchen, washing dishes, her sleeves rolled up. How do you do it? He asked, his hands folded to his arms. She turned, her eyes shining with something deep. Sometimes you listen with your heart, she said, turning to focus on the dishes. You are not like anyone I know, Elon said softly, walking a bit close. Neither is Jericho, she smiled. But there was something hidden in her, a weight she carried. Late one night, Elon saw her in the hall, holding a letter. She looked pale, her hands shaking. Whatever it said, it was heavy. He didn't ask, but he felt it, something she kept hidden. 6 months later, the house was full of life again. Laura had brought light into their dark home. Jericho had changed. He wasn't a ghost anymore. He looked up when someone entered, and he laughed, soft but real. Elon had forgotten what it felt like to hear it. Elon began skipping meetings and coming home early. On Friday, he walked in, carrying food and a plan to spend time with Jericho. That night, he checked the security feed, a habit from his worry. He saw Laura in Jericho's room, dancing. He smiled. But then she stopped, sitting by Jericho's bed, her shoulders slumped. She brushed his hair, her voice soft, I wish I could have saved you. I am sorry. Tears fell down her face. Elon's heart sank. He replayed the video, hearing her words of remorse and pain. Save him from what? He asked himself. That night, he needed the truth. He called her into his study. She came in, wearing a fitted pink dress, eyes nervous. Sit, Elon said. I saw the footage. What did you mean by, I wish I could have saved you? Her smile faded. Mr. Elon, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never told you something. She walked to the window, then turned to him. Jericho wasn't the only child in the fire. The room went silent. Elon couldn't speak. Laura leaned forward on the window, shaking. I was a nurse before this, she said. At a private hospital. My stepfather owned it. Her breath hitched. I worked there for 5 years. No paycheck, no title, just helped. I took in people, others turned away, poor, lonely, and broken. I gave it everything. She looked up, tears spilling. That night of the fire I was there. What? Elon's voice was harsh, disbelief sharp. My shift had ended, she said. An ambulance pulled in. Siren was inside, burned badly, barely alive. Her voice cracked. I helped drag her out, stayed with her. We tried, Elon. I begged them to keep going when her heart stopped. But it was too late. She slipped away that morning. I failed her. Elon sat back, stunned, the room pressing in. Her words were carved into him, heavy as stone. I was fired that morning, she whispered in a soft voice. When I saw your ads on social media, I knew it wasn't a chance. I couldn't save Siren, but maybe I could help Jericho. Silence stretched in, thick and heavy. Laura was not just a nanny. She was tied to their loss, her guilt twisted into their pain. Why hide it? Elon asked, his voice rough. I was afraid, she said, meeting his eyes. Afraid you would blame me, see me as the one who let her die. The alarm for Jericho's bath buzzed, sharp and sudden. She stood up, wiped her face, and left to care for him, leaving Elon with the weight of her truth. Morning sun flowed through the wide windows, washing the wood floors in gold. The mansion had been cold, a tomb of memories, now it breathed, warm and alive. Elon had not slept, pacing all night, Laura's story looping in his mind, her tears, her fight, the burden she carried alone. She stayed, and loved Jericho, not for money or praise, but because she cared. She pulled them from the ashes. He stepped into the hall, drawn by soft music, slow, sweet notes floating through the air. In the living room, Laura danced, her arms sweeping sideways, her feet light, her face alive with joy. Jericho watched from his wheelchair, smiling, hands clapping, eyes bright as stars. Real happiness, something Elon thought the fire had stolen forever. His chest swelled, not with pain, but with gratitude. He walked over and knelt beside Jericho's wheelchair facing Laura, and pulled out a ring from his pocket, simple, silver, it gleamed. Laura, he said, his voice thick. You saved Jericho. You saved me. You brought light when I saw only dark. Her eyes widened, and she looked shaky with surprise. I do not want you as just a nanny, he said. Stay with us. Let's be family. Will you marry me? Be Jericho's mom? Tears came, bright and joyful. She nodded, leaned in, hugged him tight, real. From that day, the house transformed. Laughter rang out. Jericho grew stronger, signing words, shining even in his silence. Elon was not just a tycoon now, he was now a father, fully there for Jericho and Laura. Laura became the center of their world. In the wreckage of their past, they found something rare, stronger than loss, deeper than wealth. Together, they found a home where everything had burned down. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you.